So this paper is about the link between rollover crisis and monetary policy. Many discussions in the Eurozone debt crisis assign a particularly important role to the possibility of a rollover crisis, meaning that a government might be tempted to default because lenders are unwilling to roll over the short-term debt. And in turn, investors might be unwilling to roll over because they expect the government to default. So this type of self-fulfilling crisis, following the analysis of Cole and Kehoe, have been well studied in the literature. But one aspect that is not particularly clear is how important are these rollover crises in a quantitative setting. And what we argue in the paper is that one important missing aspect from this analysis is the consideration of nominal rigidities and monetary autonomy. And we show that when a country gives up its monetary independence, maybe because it joins the euro or fixes the exchange rate, it's going to become much more vulnerable to a rollover crisis. And this is important because it can explain why, for example, Spain and Portugal in the Eurozone crisis suffered from very high spreads, despite the fact that their debt to GDP ratios were not as high as other economies like UK or Japan that were not part of a currency union. So the basic argument of why monetary policy matters is because having monetary autonomy can be particularly helpful in the event of a run of investors on the government debt. So if you imagine, for example, a country like Spain that is issuing debt and investors stop buying the Spanish bonds, then the government is going to be faced with the decision of repaying the coupons that come due or default. Now, given that the government does not have access to new sources of funding, if it decides to repay, this is going to imply a big sacrifice in terms of a reduction in domestic aggregate demand. And in the presence of nominal rigidities, this is going to lead to very high levels of unemployment. So effectively, the government is going to be pushed towards deciding to default whenever investors become unwilling to roll over the debt. One important implication of our paper is that we are in a way uncovering a new cost of being part of a currency union. And if you are part of a currency union, then you become much more vulnerable to a rollover crisis. And this suggests that it is important to have a lender of last resort for these economies.